COVID-19 second wave had peaked in all of the provinces and the daily infection rate has fallen dramatically. This will no doubt add to the calls to open up the economy and ease lockdown restrictions. As the first batch of vaccines arrives in the country, there is speculation that the president will address the nation this week. To discuss, we're joined by a political analyst, Professor Dirk Kotzé. Professor Kotzé, thank you for being with us. The vaccines are coming, the rates are coming down. Does it feel like the right time for the president to address us again?
Yes, that is definitely in the pipeline. We've seen in the past week that on Wednesday that the Command Council met. Saturday, the NETLAC met. He met with NETLAC, and today he met with the Presidential Coordinating Council. And this coming Wednesday, the Cabinet will meet. So this is the routine that has been followed every month. Just before we make the announcements. So I think we can expect announcements anytime after this coming Wednesday.
And do you think there will be a relaxing of restrictions? I mean, it's always a balance between lives and livelihoods. There's no definite answer on how to achieve that balance. But given where we are, what do you think?
Yes, I definitely think there's going to be a loosening of some of these restrictions. There's lots of discussion about the selling of alcohol. Apparently in these discussions, these meetings, this matter was also addressed. I think the issue about the curfew will definitely be discussed also, might be changed to later and then shorter hours for the curfew. I think the idea of the hotspots will most possibly be addressed. Opening of beaches in the Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal and the Southern Cape, I think that's most possibly on the cards also. And then it is about how to make possible for especially the tourism industry, because they were affected very much by these restrictions, how to be able to kickstart that again. Some aspects of the agricultural sector also, I think, might be affected by this. So there's a very wide range of restrictions or measures that can be addressed by President Ramaphosa.
Yeah. For the tourist industry, though, I mean, it must be very difficult, firstly, and then recently the president admitted there's just no more money, so there's not going to be a huge injection into some sort of recovery plan, maybe something, but also the vaccine. So we'll talk about the first batch arriving, but if the vaccine rollout doesn't go well, surely that could affect tourism for the next year or so as well. Do you think it's overblown, or can we really be concerned, like some are, about another lost year for South Africa and for Africa?
Well, I think it will be maybe a bit too much to generalize about it. Some sectors are already doing much better than before. I think the agricultural sector, looking at the situation at the moment, will most possibly have a very good year. Last year was already for them a very one. The commodities market or sector also did very well. But then, for example, the tourism sector is really in serious trouble at the moment. I think that the tourism, if we want to concentrate for a moment on that, very much is going to depend very much on the success of or not of the vaccination programs all over the world, not only in South Africa. Because in the end, it's very much about public trust. And tourists are not going to come to South Africa if they don't trust the situation in South Africa and other places, as well as the international aviation sector. So it's about the effects of the outcome of the vaccination programs all over the world. First must be demonstrated. It must become visible that it is making a visible impact on the situation with respect to the pandemic before the international tourism to South Africa will at all start to improve. And I think that is why the emphasis is to a large extent about domestic tourism at the moment. And for that reason, I mentioned this idea of the hotspots and the coastal areas, as well as other areas that has been affected by the regulations, because that can make already at least prepare the tourism industry for when the situation is going to be better.
Well, vaccines, the first batch are coming. That's for health workers. So that does give the president a positive message, although, as we've been discussing, still concerns about where we are securing vaccines for the majority of the population. Do you expect him to have some news?
Well, I think we've seen today again that there was an announcement that another batch of about 20 million from Pfizer is most possibly on its way, or it will come to South Africa at some point. So the total is around about 40 million, according to the reports. Now, one has to be careful not to preempt what is going to happen, because we really first need to see them here in South Africa. But I think what I expect is that we had a very slow start in South Africa, but once it starts to arrive here and the vaccination process starts to happen, there will most possibly be a speeding up of the process. So ultimately, I think it will start to deliver the goods. But at this moment, most of the South African population is relatively cynical about it. So the pressure is on the government, the onus is on the government to produce the results. And if they can do it from tomorrow onwards, I think the public sentiment might start to change over time.
There's also some cynicism around the procurement of vaccines that has to be centralized, basically, because we've seen huge flouting, huge corruption in the provinces. So it's now under the deputy president. Do you think it can all be different this time, different to the procurement of PPEs? Can we get the vaccine procurement right?
Well, again, it's going to be a major test for the government. I think they have burnt their fingers with the PPE, so hopefully they are going to be much more cautious about it. I think there's going to be more of a centralization within the Treasury, for example, about this, the funding component of it. And then something which I think is going to make also a difference is that although it's not yet discussed so much in public, but the private sector, I expect, is going to play a very prominent role in the provision of the vaccines. And that a lot of the infrastructure and therefore the procedures of procurement as well as of the delivery of the vaccinations will most possibly go through the public sector health, or the private side of the health sector. And that may make also a difference. So in order to be sort of more hopeful or positive about it, and hopefully the fact that the government has learned very serious lessons about the PPE corruption that took place, that it should be avoided in this case.
Yeah. Finally, Prof, before we let you go, how should the president be responding to incredible claims coming out of the State Capture Commission? A claim that his predecessor was receiving payments from a slush fund controlled by spies that was taxpayer money. And generally, it sounds like a free-for-all that may have also been used to try and sway votes in an ANC conference.
Yes, I think this is complicating the notion of state capture tremendously. It's deepening the notion of it, the crisis that it created, the moral crisis for the government to a large extent. It also, at the same time, I think President Ramaphosa allows this to happen because he wants to create the impression that there's transparency about it, that they want to be open about it. And then from a more sort of internal political point of view, I think what the purpose it serves also is to say, well, you are accusing me of CR17 and that I've used money for that, but look at the money that's being used from official sources like the intelligence agencies in order to try to promote the interest of President Zuma and the people around him. So there's all sorts of dimensions involved in this, but from a public point of view, it is certainly a major revelation in terms of the extent, not only that it happened, but how much was involved in it, the money involved in it, the scale of this situation. And how, when we were talking in the past about President Zuma, how we, in a sense, used the intelligence services and the criminal justice system. This is now a public demonstration of what was talked about then.
Yeah, no, we await his own appearance at the State Capture Commission. Thank you very much, political analyst Professor Dirk Kotzé.